fill-ins, I think that would be a fairer way, because those people are just waiting in their homes and it's no big deal.
Yeah, sure, it's no problem. But I was just talking about as far as kind of hijacking 10 minutes of your public hearing for Connected Coast. Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be best to do right at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
We start. So.
Yeah.
So Jim, we're still waiting for Director Anderson and or Director Lee to join us. So until that happens, we don't have a quorum.
Okay, well, we'll just wait. I know Director Lee is going to be here. I don't know about Director Anderson.
She talked about maybe being late, I think. She had an eye appointment and trying to change it, this, that.
You got that?
She may be a little bit late, I think.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I just phoned in, thanks.
Okay, and Brenda told me that she got her eye appointment changed, so she's good for the time.
Okay, we'll just keep nudging her then on the request to join. Just maybe give her a couple minutes here, and should be good if she's there.
Yeah, my like re-enter password for Teams something is stalling, so I'm phoning, and I'm fine on the phone. But if IT wants to help me out for board, that's fine too.
Okay, I'll get Rivers to touch base, but yeah, we can hear you good, Director Anderson.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had the same problem, Nova, but I did get on just by playing around with it.
You're on the phone too?
No, I'm actually on Teams.
Okay.
So, yeah, Director Anderson, what's going on?
Well, it wanted me to. We haven't started the meeting yet, I guess. It wanted me to verify my identity, so it sent my cell phone a text with a PIN. I put that in. It then wanted me to re-enter a password, which I guess I've forgotten. So I've said forgot my password, and now it's in a perpetual holding pattern. I've not had this occur before.
Okay, let's after or in between meetings, give me a shout, and I'll be happy to help.
Okay, and I think I've got a cell phone number for you. Thanks, Rivers.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Okay, so I am going to wait just a couple more minutes for Brenda. It's 9:33. We'll give her till 9:35. Good morning, Wolf. Good morning, Lane. Meredith.
And I'm just going to try, if I hit *6, that mutes me, I think. I'm just going to try that.
Yeah, you're showing up.
Yeah, you're muted.
Yeah, that works.
So, Director Anderson, I think the only way to speak or vote or whatever, you'll just have to cut in there during the meeting then.
Yeah, and I will not say anything unless I'm opposed. Thanks. For a vote.
Okay, Tom, we lost the agenda on the screen.
No, it's there.
At least I did.
We still have it up.
Yeah, it's still up, Jim.
I just got Jesse Lee initials. That's it.
Yeah, no, we're showing it on the screens here, so it is being shared through Teams. Check your Teams settings.
Just got it back. Sorry. Okay, one more minute, folks, and then we're going to go ahead and start. We'll join in. Can somebody from staff just give her a call on her phone line?
Yeah, we've been nudging her request to join here for the last 10 minutes. So.
And I just gave her a call with no pickup.
Well, in the 14 years I've been here, I have known her once to forget something. Only once, though. It was at a public hearing in her area.
She does have a text or a cell phone text. Okay, minutes up. We're going to go ahead and move ahead with the meeting, and I'm sure she'll join in soon. So this is the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of Wednesday, April 13th. Welcome, everybody. And we do have a confirmation of quorum, so I will call the meeting to order. And first of all, I would just like to welcome Jesse Lee, and I believe Stephanie Baldal. Are you there, Stephanie?
Yes, thank you, Director Abram.
Yep, thank you.
Welcome to both of you, and you're here for one item, but it's basically just if we need you, we'll give you a shout, and you can answer questions if need be. So thank you for coming. Okay, so adoption of the public agenda.
Move adoption.
Second. And Mr. Chair, do we do territorial acknowledgements at committee?
Yes, we do, which of course I forgot.
So it's all new.
I thought we actually,
I think
at
it's
some point, I
discretionary
think
at
we're
this
going
point.
to. Okay, well, I think we're going to actually get it put on the agenda page. There will be an item like adoption of public agenda. But anyway, yeah, I would like to acknowledge that we're in the territories of the, I believe, well, I'm in the territories of the Riwakai, Lekwatock, et cetera, Homolko, whole number of them. So we acknowledge that we are having this meeting in their territories. And now, adoption of public agenda. Thank you for the reminder, Don.
You
Did
have
we
that
get-
moved and seconded, Chair?
Okay. Anyone opposed? Adopted. Petitions and delegations, we have none. We have the adoption of previous minutes.
Move adoption.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Gerald, Nova. Any changes, omissions, whatever? Okay, anyone opposed? Onward, business arising. Anything business arise? Hearing none. Move on, public considerations, we have none. We have no notice of the motion. No chair's report, staff reports. First one is a development permit application from the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service. And we have a report from the CAO. Moved and seconded. Okay, so
Mr.
I guess
Chair,
this is where we,
I think John Neal will speak
Yes.
to this, Mr. Chair.
okay, that's what I was just going to say, is I think this is where we would speak to it. So John, go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. An application has been received to guide the form and character of a proposed recycling facility at Industrial Way on Quadra Island. The Quadra Island Official Community Plans Development Permit Guidelines guide form and character for industrial development. And these guidelines include those aspects related to siting, screening, landscaping, lighting, and signage. The development has been designed to meet the OCP guidelines, including the specifications with respect to odor, dust, noise, etc., and engineered to meet building code requirements. The 167 square meter tough rib metal-sided building will be dark green in color and will have a metal roof and include deer-proof landscaping and a 2.4 meter high privacy fence. And existing natural vegetation along West Road will be retained. In addition, a cedar hedge will be planted in front of the proposed privacy fence. The building will feature dark sky policy compliant lighting at each end and designed to blend in with the rural nature of the area surrounding an industrial estate. And no additional signage will be installed on the property. Parking spaces will be provided along West Road frontage, and traffic flow patterns will direct private vehicles to access the depot using the current access off Industrial Way. And the applicants are in attendance as we've heard, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. And I think you just pretty much answered all of the questions that I have been discussing with Vivian over the last couple of days. Before I get into the details, I'd just like to say that I am totally in favor of this project moving ahead. And I do have a couple of comments. Basically, they are that I have enjoyed immensely working with the staff of the Comox Valley Regional District Solid Waste Management Service on a very regular basis, sometimes over weekends, sometimes evenings, come up with an acceptable plan. Ongoing now for years, Comox Valley Regional District has been trying to convince me that we should go with recycled BC, resist it as an island. Anyway,
It's not working, Jim.
okay, there you go. All right, so I just wanted to say that the staff have been super cooperative, dedicated. They have made numerous visits to the island to meet with island groups, to stand around at the recycling center and talk to people, to show them the benefits of going Recycle BC. Had an APR day, sort of mass collection of unwanted items that you can't get rid of otherwise. It was a total success. I'll just hear where Stephanie can tell us how many truckloads we took over. But it's been great, and I look forward to a super relationship in the future on this item. The one item in the report, which I would point out, there were a number, but you've already addressed them, John. The color, all those different things, the hedging. But the map that's shown in the report, the staff report, is quite incorrect in the placement of the building. It shows a circle with a arrow dropping down out of it. There you go, subject property. Move down, back up again. Can you go back, scroll back, Tom? Keep going. Keep going. There you go, right there, subject property. It shows it at the northwest corner of the industrial property on Industrial Way, and that already has a building there. The actual building site is about where the word way is, Industrial Way. It's that whole section right across parallel to West Road. So it's up in that area between the L and the end of Way. That's the area that will be occupied by this building, just so the public knows when they see it that they don't get confused and think that we're trying to build a building on top of a building, which we aren't. The only other comment I had on the dark sky lighting was I would assume it's going to be on some sort of light standards to be able to light the driveway and the property and the parking lot and the building. And hopefully those standards can be as low as possible. They come in different heights. And the ones for like the ferry they must be, I don't know, 20, 30 feet tall. We don't need that, I don't think. So I'm sure you'll take that into consideration when you get to down to the nitty gritty, but otherwise completely in favor, and I would move acceptance. Well, it's already been moved, I guess, for the CAO's report. Are there any other comments or questions? Stephanie, Jesse, do you want to jump in here, throw anything at us that might stick or not?
No, we have nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, Jesse, thank you. But I do have to reiterate, it's been a pleasure working with you guys. Okay, so anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none, we will accept receipt and move on to item B, which is that the committee recommend that this development permit for CSWM as attached be approved, and that the chair and corporate officer be authorized to issue the development permit.
So
The
moved.
mover?
Move B.
Okay,
Second.
moved, and Gerald, second by Noba. Any discussion on this? Any staff members, any directors? Okay, it's been a long time coming, and I really appreciate it, everybody's cooperation, and I will say, if nobody's opposed, that the development permit passes. So Jesse and Stephanie, thank you for coming. Kind of a non-event. It was basically you can move forward. So let's get on with it.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks for
Presuming
coming.
that still needs to go to board.
Thank you.
Pardon me?
Yes, that's correct.
Presuming that still needs to go to board before it passes, but on way.
That's correct. It does. But I think the flavor in the room was that I think it will go through at the board with the same directors voting on it. Okay, the next one is the Lincoln Park Disc Golf Course proposal. Okay, so move the CAO's seconder.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded.
Mr. Chair, I believe Annika will speak to this.
Okay, Aniko.
Thank you. Good morning to the committee. The report before you is for consideration of a request from the Quadra Island Recreation Society to develop a disc golf course at Lincoln Park on Quadra Island. We received a request from QRS to develop and operate a 9-hole disc golf course over our fee simple ownership portions of Lincoln Park. The course has been designed and situated to occur around the existing ball fields and the bike skills park, and along the forested area behind the existing community center. QRS has advised that all works will be done by QRS volunteers, and ongoing maintenance will also be provided by QRS volunteers. However, of course, this would be an asset of the regional district. The existing agreement we have with QRS requires our approval for any development that occurs over the lands. After reviewing the proposal, staff doesn't have any real concerns associated with it, other than obviously some considerations for future minor budgets for ongoing maintenance or improvements. We are seeking the committee's direction on our involvement with this request. And there are a couple options provided for you for your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aniko. I did have some concerns, but I think they've already been answered now I saw some photos this morning of what these things called tonals, T-O-N-A-L-S, actually look like. The way they were described was they were cut sections of propane tank. That led me to believe that they were going to have raw edges sticking up, which I thought would be a bit of a liability issue, and they should have a rubber hose attached around the edges to make sure that nobody fell on them or whatever. It looks like the actual total propane tank that has been downsized and welded back together and painted for the end. People throw these discs against them and they make a tone, and that's how they know if they've got a hole in one. So I think that the only thing I would hope is that the Otter Island Rec Society is going to make sure that where they are placed is not going to impede the rest of the use of the rest of the park, because pretty much circled park in park. Good job of that. There's been excellent projects in the past. I'm completely in favor of this. I think it's really great to have the community come forward and put this forward as another recreational opportunity for people on Quadra Island and elsewhere. Who knows, we may attract people from Quadra Island to come over and throw discs. Dave, you may want to come over and practice your golf game. So anyway, okay, well, thank you. And if there is any further discussion, now's the time to have it. Seeing none.
No, Director Lee has her hand up there, Mr. Chair.
Hello, Brenda.
Hi, can you hear me? I just wanted to apologize for coming in late, having an extremely hard time signing on this morning. So finally, it did sign on, and here I am.
Okay, well, welcome. We waited for you for up to 35.
Sorry. Yeah, it was really hard to get on.
Yeah, okay. A couple of us had problems. I think it's been being sorted out. If there is any problem, I think Rivers is going to look at it between meetings. Okay, so anyone opposed to item 2, Lincoln Park Disc Golf Course proposal? Hearing none, that passes. So I guess we need a motion. Could we go back to the report, Tom? Oh, there it is. Just a second.
Mr. Chairman, the report, the only staff recommendation in the report was for receipt, and there are some three options shown on your screen for the committee to consider if they wish to recommend one way or another for the board's consideration.
Okay, so what I would hope is that somebody would move option 1 so that this can move forward to the board. And
move option 1.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Anyone opposed? All those in favor? So this passes. The committee recommend that the regional district approve the proposed disc golf course for Lincoln Memorial Park and authorize staff to work with QIRS to ensure it is developed to SRD standards. So that has now passed, and I'm sure the Recreation Society will be quite pleased. Okay, we will go on to item 3, which is Quadra Rec Society Bike Park Development, report from the CAO.
Move receipt.
Move receipt. Second.
Annika will speak to this as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Annika, welcome again.
Thank you to the committee. The purpose of this report is to inform the committee of a successful application by QRS to the Community Economic Recovery Infrastructure Program for the construction or development expansion of a bike park at Lincoln Park, which was successful in the amount of $180,000. This application was done by the Quadra Island Recreation Society without the SRD being aware of the application when it was submitted, and only actually finding out just prior to the project being formally announced as successful. Now, the language within the service agreement does require QRS to seek approval from the SRD for development of the lands and also keep us informed of any projects on a quarterly basis, whether those are occurring or pending or proposed. The agreement also does not provide QRS with any authority to act independently of the SRD. Now, there are a number of considerations as part of this existing proposal and situation that we currently find ourselves in. Primarily, the fact that the SRD was unaware that the bike park project was proposed and associated application was submitted. It didn't have the ability to consider the implications that might be associated with the project, or whether or not there were additional considerations with respect to new assets being held over our lands for community use. We also didn't have the ability to know whether or not this project may have in fact been in competition with another application that we may have actually endorsed at the SRD level by the board. And then also that once this was approved or successful, and if constructed, there would be an asset sitting over our lands that the SRD did not approve. We haven't considered budgetary considerations that are associated with the project. We're unaware of any ineligible costs that we may be responsible for or cost overruns. We're not aware at this point in time if there's any constraints related to our liability insurance. And there are potentially some considerations with respect to QRS actually awarding a construction contract outside of our requirements and our purchasing policy. Lastly, I guess the regional district does need to provide some sort of direction to both staff and QRS as part of this project. We provide you a number of options for your consideration, mainly that we can either recommend endorsing the bike project and have staff committed to the project, or perhaps put this on hold until we have more time to identify any implications that might be associated with the construction of the bike park. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the very comprehensive report, Monica. And just for your information, committee, I did receive some calls from the Quadra Island Rec Society last night after they had read one of the local newspapers that sometimes they write their reports before we have our meetings. And it's kind of difficult to say that what they say in the paper is actually what happens at the meeting. So anyway, I got a lot of calls with different interpretations of what this report meant, and some, I guess, different perception of how things proceeded. All of that aside, I take the report to be, a very good report, and I would like you to know that, and Quadra Island to know, that I supported, funded, and worked with the volunteers to put in the first rudimentary bike park a number of years ago with SRD support. And this is a completely different situation and touches on a key point in the relationship between the SRD and QIRS, the Rec Society. So basically, it makes it very clear SRD staff, this is a quote from the report, SRD staff do not have board direction to participate, oversee, or authorize any part of any QIRS proposed projects. And that goes on to say without, basically coming to the committee and to the board. So it is now here. I am in support of this bike park as a priority for Blinken Park. And I feel that the advice of staff is warranted. And there were some options in the report that I took and amended, combined to try and allow this project to move forward expeditiously without giving, carte blanche to the project. And that motion I believe I've sent it to Edie. But the motion will be that the committee recommend that the board conditionally approve in principle the bike park project of the Quadra Island Rec Society as submitted, withholding endorsement until such time as a report identifying implications for the regional district can be considered by the director and the EASC.
So, Mr. Chair.
So
we
that
should
will
on
be my
receipt.
motion when we get to,
Yeah.
I realize that. I'm just giving you a heads up. Okay, so on receipt, is there anything to be said by anyone from staff or directors?
I have one little thing to say. I really
Brent.
object. I really object to a society getting grant funds that were competing with regional district projects. I have a project that I requested funding for from the same ministry. Haven't heard a word about it. And I'm getting pretty annoyed about the fact that the board supported my project to be submitted for consideration. And yet we've got these extraneous grants going out, all to Quadra, by the way, none to Area D. And it wasn't board supported in the first place, this bike park thing. So I really think that I agree that staff have to go and look at the implications of this and report back to us.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. We actually don't get a lot of grants on Quadra. They're few and far between, I think is the word. Okay, so on receipt, is there anyone opposed to receipt? Brenda, your hand still up.
Oh, sorry, putting it down. Oh, well, I don't even see where it is. Okay. Oh, crap.
Okay. No one opposed, so that carries. Now, I have a subsequent motion. You would like me to step down from the chair, I will.
That's the best
What's the
way.
wish of the committee? Okay, I'll step down from the chair. Brenda, you're the chair for the moment.
Can you still hear me? Because my screen shot disappeared for some reason again. So if you can hear me, I can,
Yes,
I guess I can share the meeting. Maybe Gerald should, because I can't see I can't see the meeting, can't see your hands going up. So maybe Gerald, if you could take over.
If you want.
Yeah, I think so, till I get my screen back.
Okay, well, to do it properly, the board or the committee has to elect.
I move that
chair
Gerald substitute for myself due to technical difficulties.
Second.
Okay. Any opposed? Pass, Gerald, you're the chair.
All right,
and
thank you.
Put my
So
hand up. My hand's up.
Sorry,
a subsequent motion?
Go ahead, Director.
Okay, the subsequent motion is, as you see on your screen, that the committee recommend that the board conditionally approve in principle the bike park project of Quadra Island Recreation Society as submitted, withholding endorsement until such time as a report identifying implications for the regional district can be considered by the director and the EASC.
Do we have a second?
That's my motion.
Second.
All right, anyone wish to speak to it? All right, hearing none, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, carried. I'll turn the chair back to you, Jim.
Okay, thank you very much, Gerald. Okay, so that basically means that there will still be staff involvement in this, and this still has to go to the board, of course. So maybe between now and the next board, staff will be able to come up with these implications. I don't know. That's up to their work schedule. But this is the first step of approval, and it's been done. So thank you very much. Okay, number 4, endorsement of private covenants, Upper Campbell Lake. Report from the CAO.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
I believe Annika will speak to this as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Annika, you're on again.
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee. The report before you is in response to a motion that was put forward by the board at the January 26th meeting as part of a consideration for development permit up on Upper Campbell Lake and some associated covenants that were registered on title. The motion put forward by the board was that the matter be referred back to EASC for further clarification. Regarding options for increasing protection afforded by existing covenants. Now, we believe that the purpose of the resolution was to seek clarity over our role regarding covenants that are held privately on lands within our jurisdiction. What we would like to advise the committee is that covenants held by property owners or developers are often related to the building form and character and other aesthetic requirements that are not enforceable by the SRD, nor is such enforcement in the public interest. Typically, privately held covenants that attempt to regulate land use create confusion or redundancy with respect to the local government's regulatory bylaws, which actually lawfully regulate the land use and are legally enforced by local government staff. The SRD manages our land use through our OCP documents and other regulatory bylaws, such as zoning bylaws, which are created and amended through a public process. We then use covenants to further regulate development, which is not readily managed by existing bylaws or other regulatory mechanisms. Now, in this specific instance, the covenant that was referenced as part of the last application was a 1974 covenant, which appears to be an early attempt to regulate or restrict land use over the land prior to the actual application of a zoning bylaw and associated zones and permitted uses, which actually didn't take place until 1992. So at this point, what we would like to reiterate to the board is that registered covenants between private parties cannot be enforced by the regional district, and where it's our obligation to manage the public interest, and we don't want to be in a position where we would overstep our authority. Thank you.
Hand up, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Nova.
Thank you. If my memory serves me correctly, and it's a few months back now, I put together the wording for this resolution that Director Lee and Abram moved. And the reasoning behind this, from my memory, was not seeking clarification on existing roles and responsibilities, but rather, as it states, options for increasing the protection afforded by the existing covenant, understanding that it was a very old covenant and that there may well be ways of sort of increasing the protection that was originally intended through that really early days covenant through either another party, like, a third party, Land Conservancy, Nature Trust of Canada, Regional District, some other party holding a new amended revised covenant that would have third party adjudication rather than just being held by the developer. So the question was not what are our existing options and authorities, but rather with willing consent from all parties, if that existed, is there an option to actually take the goodwill and make it into a long-term enforceable covenant, which would require new parties being involved? That was my intent anyway, for what it's worth.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion, Brenda?
Yes, I think developers' covenants, especially in Area D, have their place, but they are privately registered on title and they're not under the regional district bylaws. I think the planning department and regional district should, where there are developer covenants, we should respect the intent of the people who put the covenants in place. in the first place. A lot of the covenants that I know of in Area D refer to, well, Middle Notch subdivision has builder's covenant, which regulates a conformity of setbacks from roads and lot coverage, and it makes a very neat and tidy neighborhood. There was a covenant on some properties just in front of Stories Beach, but on the non-water side, which said that people are not, and it was a builder's covenant, that people living in front of the water can't build two-story buildings and block the views of the people behind them. And that one was contested because a builder did go and build a couple two-story buildings, and that had to go to court. It was a civil dispute, which didn't involve the regional district. So, you know, they don't, these restrictive covenant or these builders covenants don't actually, they're not actually enforceable by us, but they do signal to the neighborhoods what the neighborhood intent was when it was developed. And I think we should respect some of that because people still want some of those features in their neighborhoods. We can't enforce it though, and we can't get involved, as Aniko said. And this discussion in respect of that application we had at Cedar Creek is kind of moot now because that application was denied by the committee and the board and it's not going to affect us.
Okay, so perhaps this is a conversation for another time.
Yeah, I think it's kind of
whether or not we up the ante with covenants to either bring them into the enforcement ability of the regional district or a third party, like was suggested by Nova TLC or somebody like that, a third party covenant.
So can
it's
I
always
just
been an
ask
issue.
Clarity from staff, is this Russia rezoning application, has it indeed been denied or otherwise disposed of?
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Can staff answer that?
Mr. Chairman, yes, it was denied at the board after the EastCat made that recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so on that receipt of the report, any further discussion? Anyone opposed? It's been received. Okay, number 5, feasibility study, Surge Narrows Fire Brigade, receipt of the report.
Receipt.
Second.
Mr. Chair, Sean will speak to this.
Okay, Sean, you're on. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the Electoral Area Services Committee. Following a board motion, the regional district put out a competitive tender to secure a consultant for this service. Myself, Tom, and Zoe were the evaluators, and we're proposing that the East propose to the board that the award go to Tim Ply and consultants for the cost of $8,500. Mr. Ply's submission is included in the report, and staff are available for any questions.
Okay, does anyone have any questions before I have a question? Okay, if you don't mind, I'll ask Sean, in the motion that is in the report states that the study is for the outer islands and it's endorsed by the Surge Narrows Community Association, but it's not a Surge Narrows Community Association project or whatever. So the way that it looks like the award was given, it was for Surge Narrows, but we also have the areas up a little further, Owen Bay area, that basically helped out with put out a enormous fire that could have, devastated all of Morale and Sonora Island a couple of years ago, and that was strictly because of a quote-unquote fire brigade that was completely organized by the community. So I'm hoping that this report and work that's going to be done is going to include fire brigade for the outer islands, not just Reed Island.
Mr. Chair, if I can just jump in. So looking at the East resolution that was endorsed, it is just for Search Narrows, and the scope of the RFP was just Search Narrows. And if you want to expand that scope, I'm certain we could likely go back to the consultant and say we want a larger area endorsed. Of course, that is likely going to incur some additional costs, but the motion that we received for East was specific to Search Narrows.
Mr. Chairman, if I may jump in here, I'm going to scroll down into the, I'm not sure if it's attached, but there should be a map showing the extent of the study area, which is more than Reed Island. There's several islands involved, and I just can't recall the names of them, but hopefully if it's not attached, then Sean can provide that detail, but it certainly is for more than just Reed Island, the scope of the study that was costed out. Here we are. Reed Island, Morale Island, North Rendezvous Island, and Southern Sonora Island were included. And Sean can correct me if I've missed any. Thank you.
Okay. That's great. It takes care of my concern. I was just looking at this.
And certainly that's in line with the resolution that says for the outer islands.
Yeah. Okay, that takes care of it then. I have no concerns. I'm very glad to have this move forward. So it's been moved and seconded, I take it?
Yes, correct.
Or not? Okay, anyone opposed to receipt? Okay, I'm not opposed to it, but I do have a question. Do I have 8,500 in my feasibility fund? You know, Dave?
Yes, there is, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. All right, so no one opposed, that's carried. And then B, which is that the committee recommend that Kim play an associate engaged to take determine cost and operational requirements, or should it not say Outer Islands Fire Brigade Initiative?
I think, Mr. Chair, the motion supports the report, so the details are in the report that, as we just identified, shows the areas to be studied, so I think we're fine there.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd happily move B, stating Outer Islands Fire Brigade Initiative.
Okay, that says you can do that over friendly, or what is it?
My hand up? It doesn't show my hand on my screen.
I've got it.
Lower hand.
Chair, what I intended was just to move a slightly different motion than what's presented, rather than Search Narrows saying Outer Islands, so not an amendment.
Okay, so I would certainly be happy to see that. Brenda, you wanted to talk?
I just am a little concerned about the liability issues that might present to us by the regional district getting involved in supplying fire protection to these remote areas. Because currently we have the Coastal Fire Service and the Forest Service looking after firefighting in most of these remote places. And I would be concerned if there were a fire or injury or loss of life, and we have a bylaw and we haven't been able to effectively provide the service. such that we end up in a liability situation. That could be avoided by using the Forest Service and the provincial forces that we have now. So I'm a little leery about the whole idea, but as long as the report identifies liability issues. Also, Black Creek Oyster Bay Services has been establishing new services at Merville, and we have a Merville Fire Hall being built, and we have a Mount Washington Fire Hall and Fire Service being built, and the cost of those are very, very expensive. And Black Creek Oyster Bay is providing all the training to the firefighters in those halls. But I mean, you can look it up. You can look it up and look up the cost and see whether you think that these remote places can afford the kind of service that would be effective.
Okay, Brenda, you're totally off track on this. This has nothing to do with the fire service. It has nothing to do with fire halls. It has nothing to do with, paid firefighters or any of that. This is basically a look at liability, things like that, and how the communities can come together. They're already doing it. And this is just sort of legitimizing that they are doing it correctly. They're doing it on their own pumps, their own equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the initial strike. They cannot, the BC Wildfire Service cannot meet the needs of the outer islands in the way of initial attack on fires. And if the people in the Owen Bay area, Diamond Bay area had not gone out on their own and organized 5 kilometers of firefighting equipment, all daisy chained together, we would have had one heck of a forest fire last year that was actually
point of order.
kept to within a couple. Yes?
I made a motion. I'm not clear whether it was seconded and if this discussion is on that motion or not.
You're absolutely right. Is there a seconder? Gerald?
Yeah, I second it. Yeah.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that it just say outer islands. What's written there, but for the outer islands, which
Correct.
is already in the report, but it's more to the point in the motion. Is there any discussion? Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion has been moved that the committee recommend that these guys be engaged and take study to determine the cost and operational requirements for the Surge Narrows Fire Brigade Initiative, and that up to $8,500 be authorized to be spent from the Electoral Area C feasibility study fund for this study. That's the motion. There a second? Was there a second?
We just passed it, Mr. Chair. We just passed that motion.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. A little behind the time. I would like to ask a question, if I could, after the fact. It seems to me that feasibility funds, study funds, are usually recovered if there's a new service being created. They're recovered from the service, but this isn't a service. So how would we be recovering the funds, or would we?
So, Mr. Chair, you're correct there. So we have feasibility study funds. If a function or service is established in the first year or two, we recoup those funds. If no service is established, it just hangs out there in ether. We would replenish it typically through the financial plan in the upcoming year, and or if we felt there was adequate funds, we would just leave it at that level. So no service establishment,
okay.
No payback of the funds.
All right, that totally answers my question, and thank you very much, Dave. Okay, so we're done with that one. Is that it? Tom, are we done?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can move on to item 6, proposed ward service for electoral area C.
Move
Report
receipt.
from the CAO.
Second.
All right, anyone want to speak to receipt?
Mr. Chair, I think Tom will speak to this, but just because you had a question for me yesterday, I'll get that out of the way for you as we go through here. There's a recommendation of a requisition request, and you had asked what that cost would be per home, and Mike has produced $19.78 at the 3.5 cent requisition that we have outlined. So having said that, I'll pass it to Tom.
Okay, so $19 roughly on $50,000
No,
requirement.
$19.78 for a average home that costs $560,000.
Okay, but that is working towards collecting 50,000 annually.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and I just wanted to say that it's an excellent report. I thank people that wrote it, and I did want to bring up the point, though, that if you look at the chart that is there that shows the annual cost for each of the various items, and then you go over to the right-hand column and it shows the 5-year extension of that annual cost. They don't add up. So I wondered what that.
So, Mr. Chair, they're not meant to add up. So that's because there'll be things that'll be done annually and things that won't be done every year, and or additional things that'll need to be done over a 5-year estimate. So if you look at the 5-year, I mean, 5 times 50,000 is 250,000, which we've got there, and looking at about 41,500 annually, and therefore we've recommended a $50,000 requisition annually for the service.
Okay, so that adds up. But like if you look at the top one, orphan inspection reporting 2,500, that doesn't add up times 5 to 1,500.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be things like you're going to want to add some small amount of contingency, unforeseen things that will have to be done. So I think it's fair to round up the requisition annual cost. I mean, we're talking about cost of living, fuel, services, everything going up. So to round to $50,000 on the service was reasonable to us. And have the 3.5 cent requisition of $50,000 recommended.
Okay, it's an excellent report. Thank you very much, and I support it and hope that this will be enough to take care of. But I do want to make sure that we do all of the work that we can possibly do with the money that is in the Transport Canada pot right now for each of those wards. That will be completely spent and zeroed out on whatever maintenance or improvements need to be done for each of the wards. Otherwise, it just gets carried, each one would get carried over into the general pot. I assume you're going to have this as a general pot for the 3, not silos for each one. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so if that's the way it's going to be done, then I want to make sure that that money that is in the individual silos right now gets spent on that work. Whichever.
It's certainly our goal, Mr. Chair, that we have no intention of returning money. Therefore, we need to spend all of the Transport Canada money.
Yeah, no returning money. We don't do that. So let's see. Okay, and this in the establishment of this service, so we make a recommendation here, goes to the board. Is the service going to be voted on at the board by the electoral area directors? It's an electoral area service.
Mr. Chairman, at the board, assuming the committee supports this, the whole board votes on establishment of services. It's not limited to the area that wants the service or doesn't want it. It's the whole board always that votes on establishment of services.
Okay, and then once it's established, changes or additions or whatever to the service would be just EA.
Mr. Chairman, it depends on the nature of the service. If it's a single area, then the whole board is going to vote on operational matters. If it's a shared service between two or more areas, then only those areas that finance it would vote. But under the Local Government Act, no single director can determine the questions related to operations. It has to be either at least two areas or the whole board.
Have to be in the service.
That are entitled to vote.
Yeah, so, okay. All right, so then anything that I wanted to change in the future, like if I wanted to add more money to one thing and more money, less money to another or whatever, that would have to get board approval, voted on by all directors. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That's fine. And that's all still on receipt. So anyone opposed to receipt? And that carries, and we'll go on to B, that the committee recommend that the draft bylaw to establish a war of service for electoral area C be forwarded to the board first three readings, and that the board considers seeking the approval of the electors through an alternative approval process.
So moved.
Or a seconder?
So just a
Once again.
quick reminder to the EASC, if the service isn't supported, then the default would go back to the EA admin, where again, all costs and liability are borne by all EASC directors.
You gonna second this, Brenda?
I'm thinking about it. I don't like to see an area being, I know how it goes with a single service and the whole board voting with Area D water. I don't think it's a good situation for Director Abram.
Mr. Chair, Director Anderson seconded.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Nova. Okay, is there any further discussion on the report, the motion? Okay, hearing none. Anyone opposed? Okay, hearing none, it passes. So Dave, you got your warp service finally. Well, after the board approves.
With Director Wally, I think he'd characterize it as he's gotten rid of a war of service.
Move receipt.
Okay.
Sabre School Parent Advisory Council.
Second. I'll second that.
Seconded. CAO report. Anything?
Nothing to add from staff, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anyone else have anything? Anyone opposed? Carried. On to B.
I move that the committee recommends Sabre School Parent Advisory Council in the amount of $500 be approved to assist with additional field trips and extracurricular supplies to be paid from Electoral Area A grants and aid budget.
Second the recommendation.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Anybody opposed? Carried. Number 8, request for financial assistance, Campbell River Killer Whale Swim Club. Receive the report.
Second.
Anything from staff on the report?
Nothing from staff, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything from directors?
I'd just like to say something from Area D's point of view. I'd like to thank our staff, especially Edith Watson, for getting this on the agenda so promptly after the application was submitted. Killer Whale Swim Club are financially strapped because they have to travel to the mainland quite a bit for their competitions, and they do have a lot of success with the local kids, and they got their request in, and they're going to be very impressed with the regional district for getting this moving so quickly. So, and I will be supporting the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. On the A, bylaws, 466.
I'll move recommendation B. Recommendation B on the killer whales. I'll move that.
Sorry. I didn't even see the B. I just saw the A.
Okay.
All right. So letter B is on the table for $3,500. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Anyone opposed? That's approved. And then we'll go on to bylaws. Number 466 and 447, Oyster Bay Lands report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt of the report on the Oyster Bay wetlands.
Second.
I think it was just Oyster Bay lands, not wetlands.
Well, in my mind, they're wetlands, so that's what I call them.
Mr. Chairman, just to jump in, there is a typo in the title. It should be bylaw 446 and 447.
I was going to, but I figured you guys had it right. So anyway, 446 and 447. Oyster Bay Lands.
Correct.
Report from the CAO.
Nothing to add from
Anything?
staff, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anything from directors? Hearing none. Anyone opposed? The receipt is passed. On to B. Recommend that the two bylaws be forwarded to the board for first and second readings.
So moved.
Mover. Seconder. For a second time, is there a seconder? Okay. So advice from staff.
Well, Mr.
Does
Chair,
that mean that we just don't?
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
we can.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm struggling with my mute on and off thing here. I think I was speaking, you weren't hearing me. You were looking for a seconder, I believe, on the Oyster Bay Lands bylaw.
Correct.
I was willing to second that.
Yeah, letter B.
Thank you.
You'll second it? Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, you weren't being heard at all.
okay.
Okay, we got you now, though. Okay, so item B has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, anyone opposed? That's carried. Item C, committee recommend the board authorize a public hearing to consider bylaws 446 and 447, and the public hearing be held at a date and time to be determined.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any opposed? Hearing none. That passes. So bylaws 446, 447 will proceed to the board where a public hearing date will be set. Okay, on to, there's no correspondence. We have director's reports, electric vehicle charging stations. Receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have a comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Gerald, go ahead.
I'm not sure if the intent of this report was to incur any cost to the regional district for charging stations for the general public for Area D, but I don't think that's appropriate. It's a provincial responsibility. I don't think local government should be using property taxpayers' money to gas up vehicles.
Can I put my hand up?
Okay, Nova, sorry.
Thanks. I'm not sure if Director Lee's intention is to put the resolution in her report on the floor or not, but just to say that I've been trying to encourage nonprofits on Cortez for some years to apply for gas tax funds to do this with. I think that's an entirely appropriate use. I don't think we should be spending funds maybe other than that on installing these, but any staff support to help figure out where these could best go and how they could be best supported, I think would be really valuable. We've got an active transportation study about to launch on Cortez, so perhaps there's other equivalent kind of staff investigative or contractual investigative supports that could happen throughout the region. That'd be my comment. Thank you.
Could I see the resolution up on the screen, please, that was sent to Edith?
I'm not sure if everyone can read that. It's quite lengthy. Director Anderson, I know you're on the phone, can you see or read it? It's like 3 paragraphs long.
It's a usual UBCM style resolution, three sections.
I have it separately. I can't see your screen, but I have it.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay,
I have a question first, Brenda.
Yeah.
Is this being proposed as a motion for our board, or is this being proposed as a motion to UBCM to be endorsed by our board?
This is for our board to consider. It could go to UBCM, and therefore be it resolved, just to speak to Director Wally's concerns, that he thinks that my intention is for local government to provide this. The therefore be it resolved resolution is that our staff research and report back on how the SRD can work collaboratively with other levels of government, local business, and other agencies to identify the issues that may need to be addressed to support the installation of more EV charging stations throughout the regional district, and whether there are green infrastructure grants to assist with installation / maintenance costs, how this service could best be provided, and the experience of other local governments. And that is just to ask the staff to research it. It's completely in compliance with our stated goals in this regional district to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And I know for myself that I would love to be able to drive an electric vehicle, but I wouldn't dream of it in our regional district because there's hardly anywhere to charge them. And we have to travel quite far distances to get where we need to go. And it's a shame because now we're spending close to $2 a liter on gasoline and petroleum products and, clogging up the atmosphere with them. And I think we should be looking at possible alternatives. The Prime Minister was in Victoria a few days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, and I wrote my resolution before he made his appearance. And he was talking about providing millions of dollars in grant funds for installing more electrical vehicle infrastructure. And so you can bet that there are other local governments looking at getting grants to install EV charging. Maybe the local government isn't doing it. Maybe, as Director Anderson said, it's a nonprofit society, or perhaps there'll be gas stations that also have an EV charging station at their premises in the future. But I think we should be asking some questions about it and be prepared for any opportunities that arise so that we can also be part of the lowering our carbon footprint on Vancouver Island. I think it's a good idea, and I think we should start working on it.
Okay, and if I may, I'm not going to object to this, but I think that there's a whole lot of conflicting information out there about the efficacy of electric vehicles and the batteries that are built and the resources that need to be used. And it goes on and on and on. Every day I read new articles that are written by reputable sources that are pro and that are con because of our technical ability at this particular time. So, it doesn't mean that they're not a good thing, not a good idea. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just suggesting that this is basically tasking our staff with a huge amount of research to be able to come up with something. It's not just a matter of installing a charging station. It's a matter of whether or not that charging station is cost effective. One of the studies that I just read this morning was figuring a small 4-cylinder car versus a gas car versus electrical vehicle. Cost per mile was 0.14 cents per mile on the electric or on the gas car and 1.53 cents per mile and they were using miles, so it was an American study, obviously, on the electric vehicle. So, those kinds of controversies are out there, and people need to talk about them and decide whether or not this is a good or bad idea before we come up with a blanket, you have to do this. I realize everybody's moving to electric. So, yeah, just a comment.
Further comment, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's aware that if there were more than 3 electrical vehicle owners on any given municipal street, that the hydro infrastructure couldn't handle the load. And what our Prime Minister is suggesting will need a revamp of the entire electrical infrastructure for all of Canada to support this. It could just be as likely that our current government, federal government, is replaced in the next election and the carbon tax is gone and none of these things are an issue. So I think this is premature. Let's wait and see what the federal, provincial governments do. Basically their responsibility anyway. And I don't agree with investing this much staff time and costs for a report that is way ahead of its time.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may just remind the committee, we're still on receipt. The subsequent motion has not reached the floor yet, so it's simply a receipt.
Okay, so let's
may I speak one more time to this motion? There are other local. Yeah.
Brenda, hang on.
After the receipt is so. Well, I just want to point out that all I want to know is what other local governments are doing. What can we do to be prepared if infrastructure grants become available for installing EV charging stations? I know other local governments, such as the City of Campbell River, have installed EV charging at the Art Gallery downtown, at Strathcona Gardens. They don't always work all the time. We have one of our staff who owns an electric vehicle, and he's having a hard time finding an EV charging station in our SRD that actually works, because, you know, they're vandalized and whatnot. The Comox Valley has put in EV charging stations at their recreation centers. I can see certain places where perhaps another level of government will put EV charging stations at hospitals or, you know, places where people are traveling to, where they can just plug in and they don't have to pay $2 a liter for gasoline. A lot of people, it prevents them from, it prevented me from even looking at buying an electric vehicle because, you know, right now there's nowhere to charge them. So I don't want to get stuck in between, say we're in Campbell River. So I just want, I want a very like high level report, like not, I don't want to know every little thing about it. I just want to know what are other local governments doing with this? And is there funding available to assist, you know, maybe assist businesses or nonprofit societies or other people to provide electric vehicle charging?
Please clear the receipt motion so that you can continue to speak. On the receipt motion, is there anything else? And is anybody opposed on receipt? Hearing none, receipt is carried. Okay, now you want to talk to the motion.
Yeah, I'll move the recommendation, please.
Okay, so that's the resolution that is there, starting with the whereas.
Yeah,
I'll second for
Let's
discussion.
go to the board. Okay, any discussion?
I think we need to, you know, get started on this. It's the future of travel. It's going to happen. We're going to be mandated to buy electric vehicles by a certain date. And I think we need to look at it and see what's available, see what the federal and provincial governments are planning. And I want it to be a high level report, doesn't have to be like every little detail, just give us a high level, you know, report back on what's the Comox Valley doing, what's the city of Campbell River doing, what are their experiences? Should we head in this direction?
Comment.
That's all I want.
Is that you, Gerald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, for rural areas like ours, the range of electric vehicles is insufficient to make the service even usable. The time it takes to charge one is way too long, and it was totally impractical for anybody in a rural area to go any distance in an electric vehicle. And if you're out in a snowstorm with your lights on and the heater on and you do run out of battery, there's no possible way on earth you can get a can of gas and fill it up again. Really expensive to resolve the problem. We're just not that far in technology. There's better technologies coming along. Hydrogen is a possibility. I think people panicking over electric is just a major error.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, Nova? You're muted. You there, Nova?
May I say something, Mr. Chair? Yeah, sorry, mute.
Yeah, you were muted. I just want to let you know.
Okay, apologies. Just, I can well see that in Area A, Gerald's points are very well taken. Our region is very diverse. I share some of his concerns, certainly. But the reality is that on Cortez alone, we've got, you know, probably a couple dozen of these vehicles already. There's, I think, only one public charging station, and people just do it at their homes, but it is a pain in the butt. But that shift is happening. So I think an initial investigation about roles and responsibilities and authorities and fundings is certainly very timely. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Anything from staff as far as ability to carry this out?
No, nothing from staff.
Okay, thank you. All right. Brenda, you still have your hand up?
Oh, sorry, I can't see it. It doesn't show my hand up on my screen.
Yep, it's there. Okay. So on the resolution presented, it's on the screen. All those in favor, or sorry, anybody opposed?
I'm opposed.
I think I'm going to say I'm opposed also. So that would be a defeat.
Thank you.
Correct.
Huh? Okay,
Move termination.
Second.
that would be the next thing in order. Okay. Sorry, just I gotta get back here. There is nothing else. I don't have much. All right. Termination. Anybody opposed? We're done.
See y'all soon.
See ya.
See you at 12:30. So anybody that